Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and welcome to One Detroit. We're at Eastern Market for the 4th annual Murals in the Market. Coming up on the show, I'll go one-on-one with Detroit School Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti on Detroit's new curriculum and teacher training. Nolan, Stephen, and I assess where the district stands. Plus, grassroots entrepreneurs in Islandview helping others start their own businesses, and murals in the making, public art with a message. It is all coming up. So let's catch up with Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. Well, we picked the perfect day to be here, and the Eastern Market is crowded, but this Murals in the Market Festival is really amazing. It's beautiful to see.
It's almost, you come in here and you almost don't recognize the place anymore. I mean, you think what this was just a couple, 3 years ago. It's nothing like today. This is bustling. It's what a market ought to feel like.
Yeah, and they've expanded the celebration to 10 days. So
10
people
days,
get to,
right. And it's part of this, again, this reawakening of this area. When I was a kid, this was part of my little stomping grounds around here, and there were always people, and all of these buildings were full of shops and butchers and whatnot, and so it was a place to hang out, and that we lost that in the 80s and 90s, and it's really interesting to watch it come back.
And to see a lot of the art that you see around here
I
as well.
about run over some tourists on that pulled in here.
That's right, Nolan, with your big car. All right, a couple of headlines coming out this week. One that you saw in particular, Nolan, talking about the Crown Plaza.
Yeah, I mean, what does Detroit need? It needs more large hotels. That's what the NCAA told us when they rejected us for the Final Four. You had Crown Plaza wanting to add 500 rooms next door to the Pontchartrain, $164 million development. Council said, well, no, not unless you agree to be neutral in the organizing drive that the union has against the hotel. I mean, the council ought not be acting as business agent for a union. It ought to be serving the best interests of the people of Detroit and the taxpayers of Detroit. This was a project with no subsidies, no tax breaks, no incentives. They were putting all the money. That is so rare in Detroit, and they turned it down.
But does the council have to green light everything that comes across their
desk? No, they
desk?
don't. And I mean, we've got to get out of this idea that everybody who comes along with an idea of what they want to do in Detroit gets to do it and do it the way they want to. That is the council's job, is to say, listen, if you want to do this here, that's cool, but here are some things we want to make sure that get done as well. And that is sticking up for the interest of the residents.
You should have good reasons. You shouldn't just be carrying the water of a labor union.
Okay, so instead they should carry the water of developers, which is what we've seen them do for 20 years.
They should be meeting the needs of the city,
well,
and we know we need more.
The Crown Plaza, in terms of some of the issues that hotel has had in the past several years also.
There's no question, you've got to do something with that site. If you want to have the kind of convention business here that we're starting to attract. But I'm proud of the council for standing up. I may disagree with some of the fine points of why they're doing this, but they absolutely need to play a bigger role in making sure that we get what we want out of
council starts weighing in the side of unions in disputes with business. You might as well put a close for business sign up.
Well, all right. Well, we have a big story. We have a big story tonight looking at the city of Detroit. I sat down with Nikolai Vitti, who is the superintendent of the Detroit Public School Community District, and I sat down with him before the beginning of school to kind of get an idea of how the year is going to shape up. It's his second year on the job, but I really want to look at. They have a new curriculum this year that they have to train their teachers accordingly as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at what he had to say.
when I visit schools and I see the data, I hear what the principal said, now I get to see it.
We're here with some teacher training and the teacher in service, and they're getting their classrooms ready. What are some of them saying to you about their readiness for the beginning of the year, and do they feel that they have the tools to be able to succeed with these kids?
I think, when you look at where we are from a resource point of view, we can always go deeper and broader at greater scale to meet the needs of our children. But anecdotally, what I'm hearing from teachers is that for the first time, they feel like the district is proactively trying to provide them with better tools to be successful in the classroom.
Let's talk a little bit about the teacher training this summer and the change the district made with the curriculum. Why was it necessary to even change your K-8 curriculum in math and in literacy?
Well, we did a curriculum audit in literacy and math at the K-8 level, and that audit clearly indicated that the materials that are used in the class, what we call curriculum, was woefully below grade level expectations.
And when you saw that audit, did you say, wait a minute, how long have they been operating this way, and why did we continue to do that?
Yeah, I sensed that in the interview process. I was starting to do my research and looked at materials they were using. Even in the interview process, I was able to visit schools and look at the materials. And so just based on my background and experience, I could tell that the materials were outdated, but our audit allowed for an independent review, so it didn't look personal or political. And it revealed what I thought, which was the curriculum was below grade level. And so what that meant was that when teachers, for example, were teaching the 5th grade curriculum, and the state says that students need to have a certain understanding based on 5th grade standards, our teachers and students were automatically at a disadvantage.
Talk to me specifically about some of the changes that we're going to see in literacy and just different ways they're going to be teaching kids.
So, I think we can all go back to middle school, even elementary school, where we learned with those big, bulky anthologies, where we read excerpts of stories. And sometimes I remember as a student, well, I want to learn more about that, or why am I just reading an excerpt, or why am I reading about one thing this day and something else the other day? We're going back to novels. So students will actually get a hard copy novel and read books front to back. In our classrooms, we're going to do more writing, talking about do you agree or disagree with what the author was talking about. We're going to compare a book to a poem where you can compare and contrast that work. There will be more Socratic circles, more discussion of text. So students can apply what they're learning, synthesize what they're learning, analyze what they're learning, rather than just doing bubble type of answers. We're moving to a model where students will finally understand the concepts of math. So too often we teach math formulaically, which is just memorize the right answer because it's the right answer.
Right.
And that's why a lot of our students are disengaged when it comes to math. They don't understand the mechanics of math or the thinking behind the math. So this is why our country, I think, especially struggles with creating engineers, and why we are outsourcing, if you would, other countries to bring in that talent. And so a lot of that has to do with how children are not taught math appropriately. So with this new curriculum, they'll start to understand math conceptually, not just memorizing math.
And how does this fit into master teaching and the fact that you're trying to have master teachers come in and help some of the teachers along the way and get them more integrated to what you're doing?
Yeah, the feedback at the beginning of the year, or last year when I started, was a lot of our teachers were starting to feel burnt out professionally, meaning they've been in the classroom for a while, they love teaching, they love being with the kids, but professionally they didn't know what the next step was. So what we thought of is creating a master teacher role where the master teachers would be selected through a rigorous process with the district and principals. And once selected, they would teach part of the day, and then the other part of the day they would go into classrooms, mainly new teachers or struggling teachers, model lessons, facilitate professional development, help with lesson plan development. And this way, I think it's a strategy to retain some of our higher performing veteran teachers.
I would think that somewhere along the line, the teachers say, okay, now we've got a new curriculum, that it's aligned more with the state Common Core standards. I'm eventually going to be graded on how well my students do here. So give me a little bit of a big picture look and how long you expect to see possibly some kind of change in the test scores, because that's really what the district is being held up to at this point.
I think at the end of this year, we're going to see improvement with the percentage of students that are performing at or above grade level. I think that's going to happen district-wide, and really look different at individual schools where fidelity of implementation is high. So I think that's just initially this first year. The second year of implementation is, I think, where we're going to see even more improvement, because now you get you are able to iron out the kinks from the first year implementation, and you're really starting to better understand the curriculum the second year. And that's why I've been saying in about 3 to 4 years then, we're going to start to see improvement nationally on the National Assessment for Educational Progress, especially for this year's first graders, because they had been exposed to better curriculum starting in first grade, even a little bit last year with some of the diagnostic work we did in reading. And I think when they become fourth graders and they take that national assessment, I think we're going to see definitely improvement nationally as far as national assessment scores are concerned.
You've talked a lot about equity in schools and how across the state you have very different districts operating in very different ways, and until everyone understands that every child deserves to have a quality education, we're not going to get very far. Do you feel that that message of equity in our schools, especially here in the state of Michigan, has started to resonate with people?
No. I think it's an issue that's clearly understood by Detroiters because they live the reality of inequity every day. But it isn't resonating statewide. I think the fear that we have in this country and in the state of Michigan, that it's always a conversation about, well, if you give more here, you're taking away somewhere else. And that is a zero-sum game. And we have to think beyond that, where we look at every individual child, and what is equal is not equitable. What is equitable is giving a child an equal opportunity for academic and civic success. And that happens through the traditional public education system. So a child in Birmingham may need X, but a child in Detroit who's facing poverty may need Y. And what we should be talking about nationally in the state of Michigan is, how does a child in Birmingham and Detroit have equal opportunity for academic and civic success through the traditional public school system? We haven't figured that out yet on the national level and the Michigan level, and until we do that, we're going to continue to find children that fall behind because they're just not given the resources to compete with a child who is growing up in a more middle class background and home where privilege provides them opportunity.
A lot of great points he made in talking about how this new curriculum is going to work, and also with the teachers who are doing it. I did speak to him right before the M-STEP results came out, so I wasn't able to get his take on that, which is, of course, the scores, not only statewide, but in Detroit, were very difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're still adjusting to this new test, which, you know, every time you switch the test, the scores go down because now the curriculum's not necessarily aligned with what you're testing. We got to not panic about that. We have to say, listen, we're going to stay the course and try to let this take hold. And this curriculum that Vitti has introduced is part of that, right? It's part of, adjusting what we're doing so that we can perform better on that M-STEP test. And we're probably a couple years from that happening.
What do you expect to see from Dr. Vitti this year and from the district itself?
I think his priority's in the right place. It all starts with teaching. And if he's going to give teachers the support and the skills, the training they need, and if he's willing to weed out the people who are underperforming. I mean, we've been, as part of this education reform movement over the last 25 years, a lot of it came down to a war on teachers. That needs to end. We need to give these folks in the classroom the support, resources they need. We need to hold them accountable, but we need to give them the tools they need to succeed.
And there was a big announcement just last week coming out of Marygrove in a concerted effort with Detroit Public Schools and also the University of Michigan, kind of this P20 system. Yeah,
this idea that all of it's got to work together and can do that in one spot. They've got the space at Marygrove to have a P20 campus. But the School of Ed at Michigan is going to be heavily involved in teacher training and the way that we make teachers effective in the classroom right there on that campus. All this stuff is sort of coming together and aligning at the right times. And again, we just got to be patient. It's not you're not flipping a switch and the light's going to come on tomorrow. You're warming up the bulb so that the light can come on. It's going to be a couple of years before we see the results.
Well, and I think that's really difficult, though, for a parent who has a 10-year-old in the school district and is saying, how many years can I wait with my child?
I've got two kids I've had to educate outside the public school system for most of the time they've been here. There's nobody more frustrated about that than I am, but I also understand enough about how schools work, how education works, that we can't just keep lurching at the quick solution. We can't lurch for the thing that people say, well, this will solve it in 2 years or 3 years. It really is 5 or 10 before you get it
Nor
fixed.
can you expect parents who have just one chance to get their kids educated to stay in place and say, okay, we're going to let you experiment on our children.
Yeah.
You know, there are too many other options. They're
Done a lot of that in
fighting
Michigan, too.
a vicious circle.
And when we talk about that in Michigan and kind of taking the broader view of where we are, and we hear education being part of the governor's race, and you hear also different consortiums saying, well, we're going to focus on changing education and making sure the business community is behind that. Where are we seeing that effort go?
Well, I'm not sure where it's going in Michigan. I mean, I think we're still stalled in terms of a single approach that everybody buys into in terms of which way which way we're headed. M-STEP is, I think, an encouraging sign that way, but we have a lot of other questions to address, including funding, accountability, funding equity across districts that I don't see any traction in Lansing to deal with any of that
Last
stuff.
word on that, Nolan.
I think you see business leaders of Michigan coming up. They've given up on the big sweeping solution. They're focused on teacher training and resources. I don't think anything's going to change in Michigan until we get rid of the bifurcated system, hold the governor solely accountable for education, and get rid of that elected school board.
All right, you know, we talk a lot about entrepreneurs and small businesses that are trying to succeed in the city of Detroit and really try to get started. When we were over on the east side with some of our community conversations in Islandview, we found out about Nicky's ginger tea. They manufacture it over there on the east side. You can get it at Whole Foods. And we talked to them about how difficult it is to start up a kind of business like that, but now they're actually helping other businesses get started over on the east side.
A delivery run to Mudgie's Deli and Wine Shop in Corktown. They're restocking Nicky's Ginger Tea, a concoction freshly brewed in Islandview on Detroit's east side.
Hello.
So Nicky's Ginger Tea, many years back, I was just outside of the restaurant somewhere and I tasted it somewhere else and I saved the bottle because the bottle had the phone number on it. And I called and brought it in here, fell in love with it. It's super gingery, it's always super fresh. It's an awesome thing. We're actually making cocktails with it now, and we've been with them now for at least 6 years.
Detroit has its ginger ale. You can find hot ginger tea you steep with a tea bag. But Nicky's ginger tea comes cold in a bottle with a kick of its own. Now the company is looking for more customers and expanding its product line.
We're reaching out to all of the cafes and coffee shops that are popping up all over the city of Detroit. And we're also in the early stages of talking about potentially working with Starbucks. So we have a lot of places to go.
Monique Sasser is the Nicky that's on the label. Her daughter Andrina helps run the operation. Back in the 90s, Monique's father found a good deal on ginger root at Eastern Market.
One day my grandfather brought home some ginger. And she said, this is interesting. And she started experimenting with it.
That ginger root, I was so fascinated by its flavor, and I just kept experimenting. And at that time, I used lemons, limes, and honey.
And then she created this ginger tea.
It began 21 years ago in Monique's kitchen, where she created a startup before they called them startups.
I was across the street in my apartment, and then one of my friends said to me, well, Nicky, why don't you talk to your church about using the commercial kitchen?
The Church of the Messiah near the Belle Isle Bridge became home base. Monique sold her ginger tea at Eastern Market. She still does today. When the economy tanked in 2009, her tea almost did too when their client base, local stores and restaurants, went under.
It's not for the faint heart, the weak at heart. It is not. You have to remain open, work hard, and never give up. There were days I wanted to give up, but I never did.
Andrina spent a year to get the local Whole Foods to carry their tea. She helped add new flavors to the product line.
We did get to a point where we had a mother-daughter battle, so to say. My mom is very creative, and she'll get in the kitchen and she'll just be mixing this and that.
I'm like a mad scientist in the lab. I refer to the kitchen as the lab.
And I'm like, so at one point I said, Mom, you got to get out the kitchen. I have to come up with a solid recipe. I have to come up with solid nutrition facts. You got to get out the kitchen.
It's been very local, what they've been doing.
and now they really want to expand beyond local. I mean, we need to go over the financials tomorrow.
Business consultant Sydney Cleveland is working on expansion plans.
As I try to help them to transition from being the person who's making the tea in the kitchen and bottling it and putting the labels on and doing all that work to actually running the business.
I always wanted to create something that was like an umbrella. You come along, you work with Nicky's Ginger Tea, we help you, we help back you, we help get your product out there too. So it shouldn't take you a year to get into Whole Foods. I did that work already. Let's work together, let's grow together.
Now Nicky's Tea has become the anchor of a neighborhood business incubator.
And we love it. We love the camaraderie. These are my people.
Detroiter Beverly Bright makes candles. Her soy-based ginger tea candles are now part of the product line.
These are higher end. These are not your dollar store candles. These candles are the luxury of luxury.
Carla Quorm makes frozen treats on a stick. She's created a confection using Nicky's ginger tea.
And I've always wanted to make sorbet pops for Nicky's Ginger Tea, and when Carla explained to me what she does, I asked her would she like to experiment with us.
This is where I feel home at when I'm creating.
When Quorm lost her job in the mortgage business, she had to go to work for herself.
They have really paved the way. It's 20 years, and I've only been doing it for 2, so they know a lot more than I do, that where I don't have to bang my head on a wall, they're willing to share the information.
Now, Andrina and sister Catherine make ginger candy from leftover ginger root. They say it sells out at Eastern Market. Expansion plans have them moving somewhere else in the city. Not far, but Andrina says she'll always live in Islandview.
We've always been in this neighborhood. I've watched as homes that I played in as a little girl burn to the ground. Everybody else can run, but this is our home, this is our city. We have to stay, we have to make an impact. And this is our community. If we don't rebuild it, someone else will. And what a shame to see our community rebuilt and thriving, and we didn't have anything to do with it.
We'll check back in with the folks from Nicky's Ginger Tea to see how they're doing in the coming months and all those businesses that they're helping out. Well, Murals in the Market is an international festival that really connects our community to art, and there are so many different artists with their own stories. We're going to introduce you to one. His name is Phil Simpson. He grew up on the city's east side, and he put smiling faces on the sides of buildings.
When I first started, I started painting smiles over vacant houses just to cover up some of the negative cuss words. Just want people to, you want to walk past something that's encouraging. In general, man, murals are influencers to the neighborhood. When you add a mural in a neighborhood, actually had input on it, they had feedback, they feel connected to the mural now. So I'm born and raised on the east side of Detroit, and it's considered one of the worst. Well, on paper, let's say that. My friends and I don't ever want that to be the narrative for where we come from, so we do a lot of work in the community. The mural I did on Milwaukee and Hastings, what made it a favorite is that on Hastings Street, my granddad used to live in that neighborhood before the freeway was built. He was the first person I took to see the mural when it got done. Some people find what they love in their 20s. I've been doing this since like 10, you know? Art has always been my thing. And now I'm finding a way to provide for my family with art. So now it's like, it's really my life now. We're gonna have a lot of flesh color faces, but we're also gonna keep it authentic to like my true style of just doing like green faces, orange faces, just all around to represent humanity in general, smiling together. Our passion is different. I mean, not different, but it's not a traditional passion. We don't have an everyday paycheck. And then when they click, or when you do make it, or when you start getting invoices, and that makes it better. But I think most of us that do this with no money because we love doing it, you know? To all the parents out there, keep your kids' drawings. My mother did a great job encouraging my art, but also keeping all of my old sketches. I can go back 26 years to find my earliest drawing. It lets me know I came a long way. So this is definitely just the beginning. of my mural journey these first 3 years, you're gonna see some more smiles around the world. That's the goal, to spread smiles and joy through other inner cities where it'll have a bigger impact on the youth. I waited for this day, you know, in the city of Detroit as an artist, to be invited to do this. You got a little kid from the east side of Detroit painting smiles, and I don't think it could get any better than that. You know, dreams come true for real.
So keep an eye out for Phil's work and make sure you see some of the great murals that are down here at Eastern Market. That's going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you find us on social media. We're on Twitter and we're on Facebook. Tell us what stories that you'd like to see. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next time.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Maryland cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.